Omori is a mysterious boy living in a colorful and happy world full of friends, enemies, and much more. Not much is really known about Omori, we just know he's very quiet. In fact, he doesn't speak at all, and he's also very powerful, taking out any kind of enemies and bosses who get in his way. There's a lot of fun to have in this world of his, but the one thing he cherishes the most is his friends and all the time he spends with them. But most importantly, his dear older sister who always watches over him. Overall, it seems like a pretty fun and happy life for Omori and his friends, yet somehow, something just feels off. As if this very world is hiding something important. Perhaps the fact that Sunny wakes up in the middle of the night to a message on his home phone from his mother. His mother asks him if he's finished getting ready for their new home, which they'll be moving into in a few days, and reminds him of his chores he's been asked to do that are on the list. She also encourages him to say one last goodbye to his old friends, especially Kel, since he's been trying to contact them for months. Finally, the message ends and Sunny realizes he's kinda hungry, but even if he tries to, he just can't bring himself to go down the stairs. So, he decides to go back to sleep, a very common technique to avoid hunger. However, the hunger eventually overpowers him, and he decides he has to eat. But in order to do so, he must face his fears and overcomes them, so he can actually go downstairs and get himself some food. He starts going down the stairs and it seems to stretch out forever until eventually Sunny becomes afraid and quite literally fights his fear. He tries his best to throw everything at it, but no matter what, he can't seem to fight the fear off until suddenly he hears a voice telling him to take a deep breath. It's not as scary as it looks. Sunny remembers how to calm down, and once he does so, his fears disappear, and to his surprise, he somehow found himself down the stairs. So he gets himself a microwave steak he was so desperately craving, only to make him so sick from eating said steak. He ends up throwing up, and afterwards he hears a knocking at the door from his sister Marie. But after opening the door, he very quickly learns that it is not Marie. So, after a pretty rough attempt at getting a midnight snack, Sunny throws himself back into bed to continue his imaginary adventures. The beginning section of the game pretty much sets up how the main story of the game will play out, and it sets up the current state of Sunny at this point. First of all, the way we're introduced to the game is in Headspace, Sunny's dream, where Omori is in control. We're made to believe that the world of Omori is all happy and carefree and everything's fun and colorful with nothing scary in sight. Eventually though, we're slapped with the harsh realities of Sunny's life, realizing that the happiness we were fed was all just a lie. A dream where everything is better than what is the truth, which I think is the perfect way to introduce our protagonist, Sunny. His introduction perfectly shows us the reality of his world and how he constantly tries to run away from it in his dreams. But it also begs the question, why is he doing this? What is he running from? Which sets up the main conflict we try to resolve throughout the entire game. Also, we see the very first fear encounter of the game with the fight against something in the dark, which seems like a small thing, but just think about it. This is something Sunny has probably had to go through several times just to go down the stairs. The boy is just so anxious and afraid and for sure needs some support to help him overcome his fears. But of course, he's alone, so he has to find some way to fend for himself. That is until he hears a voice though that tells him to calm down, and he's able to overcome his fear for now. Then there's the whole steak and door situation that happens, and finally Sunny heads to bed. But I think this whole part just shows just how terrible Sunny's life is at the moment and how bad his mental health currently is. He's partaking in quite a lot of escapism. He sees things that aren't even there, and he's barely able to function without pretty much having a mental breakdown. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get what I mean. But for now, Sunny decides to once again escape all his problems in his dreams, hoping that one day things could get better. Omori once again awakens in white space, and after picking up a couple of items, heads back into Headspace, discovering that Basil has gone missing. After consulting with Marie for a bit, Omori and his gang, Hiro, Kel, and Aubrey all decide to head on an adventure to find their lost friend. After looking around, however, they quickly find out Basil is nowhere near them, so they return to Marie and consult with her once again. Kel then suggests that they climb to the big old ladder and head into Otherworld. Aubrey protests, saying that Omori is scared of heights, but Marie and his friends encourage him to face his fear, and so Omori is convinced I think he doesn't really say anything, so... And they all climb into Otherworld. There's two things that stand out in this very small section, which is Basil's disappearance and Omori being able to overcome his fear. Basil's disappearance obviously ties to his escapism from his actual reality. The second Basil started mentioning what's actually happening in the real life, he suddenly disappeared out of nowhere, leaving no trace behind. I think from the get-go it's pretty obvious that he was banished from Headspace for attempting to make Sunny aware of his reality, since it would completely ruin his coping mechanisms from escaping from it. Although at this stage we still don't know why Basil specifically was banished and why he knew the truth about everything. And the second thing is Omori overcoming his fear, specifically his fear of heights. Now this seems normal, but the thing is, Sunny, his real life counterpart, did the exact same thing not too long ago when going down the stairs. So this pretty much establishes the connection between Sunny and Omori is a lot more than just counterparts. The actions of one counterpart can very much influence the actions of another, as we saw right here, which is a very important thing to take note of, and also a very dangerous thing considering we saw Omori stab himself not very long ago. And it also shows that at the moment, Sunny and Omori are very much connected and in tune with each other, neither side really rebelling or protesting the actions of the other. After all Sunny wants is to escape from his harsh reality. Omori and his party head into Otherworld in search of their lost friend Basil, but they find out that the legendary Space Boy is sick, so they decide to put in their best efforts to help him out. From here, the plot kind of derails and goes off track from the whole Basil disappearing plot, and it doesn't really affect anything about Sunny or Omori's character. Eventually, Kel angers Space Boyfriend, we fight him and we beat him, and we all make up and become friends somehow. Afterwards, we collect one of the 12 keys needed to complete the Hangman game, which I completely forgot to mention earlier, but basically, you collect the keys in order to fill in the phrase, and once you do, you complete the game, but also make sure not to collect the right ones because then you lose. Anyway, this isn't really important until later. So, after leaving Captain Spaceboy's house, the gang goes back to Marie and tells her they still haven't found Basil yet, and instead, they got a little distracted. The others see no trace of him, but Omori sees the red footsteps left behind, which he ends up following. Omori finds himself following a shadowy figure back to Cattail Field, but this time it seems a bit darker and snowier. Also, a lot of the areas here now have several items, perhaps items that connect to the memories in the real world, especially when you take in the text provided when interacting with said items. But also, for that same reason, maybe why they all disappear after interacting with them, since they serve as reminders of the real world. Omori follows the stranger into the barn and also into the picture, which leads us into a dark room that is only black and white. From here, the only choice Omori has is to go up, which he does, and finds a key, a family photo, and a stand for sheet music. The only thing you could really do here is take the key, which if you do, causes the family photo to be blacked out, and blacked out sheet music appears on the stand. Once again, you only really have one choice, which is to leave, and when you do, Omori is attacked by something, and is returned to white space once more, where his only escape is to stab himself again, waking up Sunny in the morning. The first thing I want to point out in all this is the fact that Omori's party got distracted. We all know Omori / Sunny is not only the leader of the party, but also the one who is dreaming, therefore the one who pretty much controls most of everything that happens in his dreams. This brings us back to the whole escapism thing. Not only is Sunny Omori escaping from his reality, but also escaping from it in his dreams. Earlier, Basil has mentioned something Sunny wishes to forget, and now knowing Basil may do it again, he's doing whatever he can to avoid actually finding him, or even remembering him at all. Somehow though, the truth always finds its way to him. Second is all of the scattered items, which presumably are from Sunny's actual past memories. I mean, if you played through the game, you know they are, but anyway. I think this shows that by repressing the bad memories of his life, Sunny is also repressing all the good that's happened in his life. Like all these precious memories he's probably forgotten by now through repression. At the same time though, he seems fine with doing so as long as it keeps him away from the truth, which is probably why immediately after seeing these items / memories, they vanish, perhaps implying Omori / Sunny is repressing them further in an attempt to also repress the truth. And finally, we have the whole black and white room with a family photo, music stand, and a key. Now this room is very much bringing Omori Sunny closer to the truth. If you know, you know. First of all, we have a photo of presumably Sunny's family. I mean, baby Sunny's literally right there. And we have the music stand, which if we take concept from before, where we saw Violin Ship Gift, relates to the real world. And finally, another key which will lead Sunny Omori to the truth. In short, this room has a lot of things that hint not only towards the real world, but also towards whatever secret Sunny is running from, especially considering something appears after Omori lives and basically attacks him, which is why it was locked away in the first place. So he could never be reminded of it again. But like I said before, no matter what, the truth finds a way to follow him. For the first time all game, Sunny wakes up in the morning after quite a rough night and a wild dream. There's another message on the phone from Sunny's mom telling him that she'll be gone again, but he can take care of himself, right? Right? After hearing the message and leaving his room, Sunny hears knocking coming from outside again. Once Sunny heads to the door and interacts with it, he hears Kel, his old friend, asking him to come out, especially since Sunny's moving away soon. Now from here, obviously, the one and only option is to open the door for Kel. I mean, who would reject being in the presence of the one and only super strong and tall, energetic boy, Kel? No, Hikikomori doesn't exist. Anyway, Sunny, against all of his escapism, actually decides to open the door and confront his old friend, Kel. Kel was surprised and shocked that Sunny actually opened the door, which makes sense considering he's been trying for months, according to Sunny's mom. Because of this surprise though, Kel doesn't really have a plan, so Kel, just decided to go to Hobbies where they used to go all the time. Alright, before we even move on, there's obviously a huge moment here. Sunny finally goes outside. The boy who spent years isolating, escaping from his reality, constant dreaming of a better life, finally decides he's had enough escaping and goes out for the first time in literal years. Or maybe he just really wanted to see Kel, but for whatever reason, Sunny has finally managed to break past this limit of his that's been holding him back for so long, which is a huge step towards improvement for him. I mean, he must have felt absolutely terrified to open that door, not knowing what kind of world is out there waiting for him, especially considering what happened last time he opened the door, but still, he showed an amazing amount of courage and opened that door, and found himself in the presence of the legendary Kel. And it also shows that Sunny is breaking free from his escapism cycle, which also goes against his counterpart, Omori, which not only disrupts the cycle, it also creates what would become a struggle for power. So, Sunny and Kel head to the one and only Hobbies, at least I think it's the only one, and Kel remembers to get a gift for Hiro, his older brother who will soon return from college. And they do so by getting Papa Chip's chip off the old block cookbook. Wow, I'm surprised I said that first day. Ah yes, truly a one-of-a-kind book. Since the town doesn't have much to do, Kel decides they should just go back to the park. When they arrive, they find themselves witnessing some bullying involving a familiar face. Basil seems to be asking someone for help, but she doesn't want anything to do with it. Kel then recognizes Basil and accuses the mysterious person of bullying. Kel and Kim argue for a bit, and then in comes the rest of Kim's gang, which includes another old friend of theirs, Aubrey. Kel tells Aubrey to stop bullying Basil and tells Sunny to support him, and everyone else notices that Sunny is actually there. Aubrey then proceeds to mock him by asking him how long he's been hiding in his own little bubble, but Kel defends him, saying she doesn't know what he's been through. Then Basil tries to talk to Aubrey and Kim stops him by pushing him away, which angers Kel, and eventually leads up to the first real-world fight against Aubrey. The fight doesn't last very long though, as Sunny attacks Aubrey with his knife, cutting her in the process and also ending the fight. Aubrey's gang rushes to her in concern, and they decide to evacuate for now due to Aubrey's injury. Kel thanks Sunny for his knife, but then realizes how dangerous Sunny carrying a knife is, so he decides to take it away. They go to check up on Basil, who says he's fine after the whole incident, and Kel tells him that Sunny is also here, and the long lost friends are finally all reunited again. Well, except for Hiro, and Aubrey, and Marie. But anyway, Kel asks Basil to hang out, but he declines since his grandma hasn't been feeling very well lately. However, he does agree to be walked home, so they do just that. They arrive at Basil's house and they drop him off, but then he tells them to wait and explains to them that Aubrey took the photo album and won't give it back. So Kel decides that they'll do whatever it takes to get it back, and Sunny, I guess agrees? And so they head off on the beginning of a new adventure. The first part of this section doesn't really have anything, just a couple of dudes chilling in the local hobbies, but then things get real serious. Sunny, for the first time in 3 to 4 years, according to Aubrey, encounters his old friends. Now the thing is, Sunny pretty much is just silent the entire interaction, so not much can really be said. But I'll try anyway. So firstly, throughout the whole day so far, Sunny hasn't spoken a single word. But why is that? I think in general, Sunny is just a more quieter person, but the fact that he hasn't said anything, especially with Aubrey making fun of his coping mechanisms, is quite odd. Honestly, without any real answer, the best thing we can do is theorize, which is what I'm about to do here. Exploring Omori. Hey y'all, JJC Games here, the one and only Omori lore master. So today, we're gonna answer the one and only very complicated question: why Sunny does not talk, with my very special drawings, as you can see here. So, the reason Sunny does not talk throughout all of Omori, that is a very complex question, as you know. But there are many possible reasons why he does not do so. So, the first theory that we have is because Sunny is running away from his trauma. So, as we all know, Sunny has spent several years just chilling in his house, you know, cooped up, not doing anything, not talking to her at all, kind of like I'm doing right now. But, the point is, you know, he's staying inside. Well, I'm not staying inside all the time, but you know what I mean. I'm inside right now. He's inside all of his life, right? That's the point. So, you know, going outside for the first time after years of just spending inside, not talking, not doing anything, obviously, he's going to have a very hard time talking to anyone after years of not doing it. And also, considering Sunny was already kind of, you know, a more quiet and reserved person, it's going to be pretty hard for him, even more harder for him to, you know, actually open up and do stuff after so many years. But that's just our first theory. So the second theory is give me a second, all right? The second theory is that Sunny is selectively mute, which is, you know, I've seen that thrown around the community. So what does selectively mute mean? I don't know. Let me ask Google. Actually, I already have Google. I just gotta. So, according to Google, you might ask, what does all this mean? According to Google, it means a severe anxiety disorder where a person unable to speak in certain social. I read that so terribly. Let me read. A severe anxiety disorder where a person is unable to speak in certain social situations, according to Google. Now, if I'm being honest, look, I don't know much about selective mutism. Like, I don't really know anything about it at all. So I'm just gonna leave that theory there. You can discuss it amongst yourselves because I am a dummy and I don't know anything about it. So with that being said, we're going to jump into our third theory, which is that because Omori does not talk, Sunny himself will not talk. So we know, as we've said earlier, Sunny and Omori are like the same. They do a lot of the same stuff. They inspire each other. They influence. I don't know about inspire, but they influence each other's actions. All right. Hey, look. I forgot about the draw. Like, boom. They're equal. They're doing the same stuff. They're doing the same stuff and everything, right? All right. We know that much. So, since Omori does not talk, we know Sunny himself probably will not talk, because if they do the same stuff, then one is not gonna do the other. And yeah, that will lead to him not talking. Do I have any more stuff left now? Okay, that is all the theories I have. So the first one was because he's spent so much time so much time inside. Second one was selective mutism, and the third one is because him and Omori are the same. Alright, wow, congratulations, we did it. We did an entire exploring Omori episode in a non-exploring Omori's episode, exploring Omori mysteries. But that is all I have for you today. If you liked, I mean the video isn't over yet, so I don't know, I'm just gonna go and explore now. Alright, that's all we have. That's all we can do right now. What was that? Okay, back to the plot. The next and last point I want to bring up is Sunny using the knife to attack Aubrey. As small of a thing as this is, I think it's a very serious issue that Sunny was just willing to assault Aubrey with a knife there, even if she did have a nailed bat. That's a whole nother issue. Like, why are you just carrying around a nailed bat? I think it just goes to show just how out of touch Sunny currently is with reality. He's been living in his dreams for so long, he's having a hard time figuring out what is fake and what isn't, and also what is right to do and what isn't in reality. I mean, on the first day out, we see Sunny hallucinate things that aren't there. For example, characters from Headspace just randomly appearing in the real world, but disappearing once Sunny interacts with them. And I think this is exactly why he just attacked Aubrey like that. You could say my man thought he was Omori IRL and forgot the ethics of reality. Either all of this, or he just felt really sad in seeing Aubrey's nailed bat and decided to defend for himself, which would also make sense. Either way, afterwards, Kel takes away the knife and tells him just how dangerous it is. Good job, Kel. After hearing the situation of the photo album, Kel and Sunny go on an adventure to try and get it to return it to its rightful owner, Basil. In order to do so, they go through several fights against members of Aubrey's gang to try and find where Aubrey is, the current photo album holder. Eventually, they fight Kim Advance and after learn from Kim that Aubrey is currently attending church. So, Kel and Sunny head to their local church where a sermon is currently being held. So Kel tells Sunny they should wait until it's over. But without notice, Sunny just casually barges into the church, which shocks Kel, but he's like, let's just go along with it. They walk up to Aubrey and tell her to return Basil's photo album, but she refuses, saying it's none of his business, which he says it is because they all used to be friends. Aubrey agrees that they used to be friends and no longer are, to which Kel replies Marie would be sad to hear that. And Aubrey says, who cares what Marie thinks, Marie is dead. Kel gets fierce and asks Aubrey what's wrong with her, but then calms down and tells her he understands she has new friends, but she can't forget her old friends like that. Aubrey tells him her old friends weren't there for her when she needed them. A bit more arguing goes on that doesn't really involve Sunny, and then Kel understands her and tries to apologize, but Aubrey isn't having it and tries to leave the church. But Kel stops her, saying she hasn't returned the photo album. The churchgoers then start to notice the commotion going on and start talking badly about Aubrey, and Aubrey gets angry and directs her anger towards Kel. Kel, however, does not want to start a fight and tries to stop it, but Aubrey seems too blind with anger to care, starting the second fight against Aubrey. Sunny and Kel battle it out against Aubrey with the churchgoers in the background saying several negative things about her and the whole situation going on. After a while, Aubrey decides this fight isn't worth her time and the fight ends, but the chatter from the churchgoers does not. Aubrey runs out of the church and Kel admits to Sunny this was all probably a bad idea, so they both leave the church as well. This particular section mostly has to do with Aubrey and fighting the hooligans, so there's not really much about Sunny, but there are a few things I want to say. Firstly is obviously Sunny just straight up barging into the church with no warning, which pretty much just ties into what I said earlier about Sunny attacking Aubrey with the knife, and Sunny not really being used to reality and its ethics yet. So the same applies here. The next huge thing is hearing from Aubrey that Marie is dead. Sunny has been escaping from that fact for a long time. As we see in Headspace, Marie is clearly alive and well as always. But in reality, we know now she's gone, and Sunny has tried his best to deny that fact for 4 years. He even keeps Headspace Marie at her picnic at all times, preventing her from ever being in any danger, so he would never have to experience losing her again. Basically, we learn one of the main reasons why Sunny has been escaping from reality for so long. Afterwards, there's this argument between Kel and Aubrey, and finally, the fight between all of them and the aftermath of it, which once again, doesn't really show anything about Sunny's character, it's more of an Aubrey thing, so we'll move on. Sunny and Kel exit the church, and as they walk past Aubrey's house, they catch her throwing away the photo album in her trash can. Kel retrieves it and gives Sunny a celebratory high five, and they head to Basil's house to return the photo album. They knock at the door and meet Polly and tell Basil they've retrieved the photo album. Polly then invites them to dinner, which Kel agrees to, and they all enter Basil's house. Kel and Basil talk for a little while, and then Kel suggests looking through the photo album, which after some hesitation, Basil agrees to. Sadly, they find out some of the photo album is still missing, but they'll make sure to get them back later. Polly then comes in and asks for help with the food, which Kel volunteers to do, leaving Basil and Sunny in a very awkward position. After making Basil extremely anxious, Sunny explores Basil's house and ends up in his grandma's room. Basil walks in a bit after he does and starts talking with him. Problem is, yeah, he doesn't talk. Basil starts talking about the past with Sunny, recalling that it's been 4 years since they've been together. He says it's still nice to have Sunny around, even if it's only for a little while. Then he gives Sunny his photo album, saying he thinks he can make more use of it. Basil goes on about how a lot has happened since then, and he thinks he took photos of what he cherished the most and was afraid to lose. And he hopes that one day things can return to how they were before. Out of nowhere, Kel interrupts this moment by calling them for dinner, which they both go down to get. Kel tells Polly about Hero's upcoming return, and then he notices Sunny with Basil's photo album. Basil clarifies that he gave it to him. Kel says that's pretty cool and it makes sense since Sunny is moving away, which Basil is hearing for the first time, and it sends him into a sort of panic. Basil then quickly rushes to the bathroom, confusing everyone at the table. However, Sunny is the only one who goes looking for answers, and once again barges in with no warning. Basil is in tears, repeatedly telling himself everything is going to be okay. He then turns around and notices Sunny, which he says he's glad to see. Basil asks Sunny if he can see it too. Something behind him. Sunny can then interact with the mirror, which shows he can indeed see something behind him. And interacting with Basil makes him say, "Sunny, why do you look so scared? Everything's okay now, isn't it?" Once Sunny begins to leave the room, Basil begs him to stay, telling him to not leave again. Sunny leaves anyway, Basil completely breaking down afterwards. Kel and Sunny then reunite, and Kel says they should return home because it's getting pretty late, which they do. And Kel walks Sunny home. Kel thanks Sunny for hanging out with him and encourages him despite his quietness throughout the day. Finally, Kel says he'll come back tomorrow so Sunny could see Hero. And then Sunny enters his home once again. So things seem pretty calm here up until Kel leaves Sunny and Basil to help Polly with making dinner. What really stands out here between Sunny and Basil is how awkward the situation is when you have one boy who won't talk and another who's very socially awkward due to years of isolation and trauma. I guess what this really shows is just how much the 4-year gap and trauma has affected them, especially later in this section. Two very close friends who probably talk to each other all the time now are very separate, and Sunny isn't even willing to talk to him at all. Time and trauma have very much split them apart. Sunny, however, still doesn't remember what exactly happened to make it like this. The moment that really stands out here is when Kel tells Basil Sunny is moving in. Basil panics and runs to the bathroom to safety, and Sunny follows him. Here we see the true state of Basil, what has become of him after years of trauma, isolation, and repression. And when Sunny encounters this, his first thought and reaction is to run away, which he does by leaving the room despite Basil's request to stay. Once again, this is pretty much Sunny partaking in escapism again. Even if he's willing to live in the real world again, he's still running away from the very thing that made him run away from reality as a whole so long ago, his trauma. But I think it's safe to say at this point, no matter how hard he tries to run, it will always come back to him somehow. And the only way to make it go away is to face the truth. Afterwards, of course, we have Kel and Sunny walking home together and Kel thanking him for hanging out. But there is one thing I noticed about this. When Sunny is with Kel, or anyone else for that matter, his fears do not pop up at all. However, when Sunny is with Basil, his fears begin to show up, which pretty much shows that Sunny's trauma is very much associated with Basil, and this is exactly why Sunny wants to stay away as far as possible from him, especially in the state that he was in the bathroom. Even in Headspace, when Basil mentioned something about Sunny's trauma, he was forced out of it and completely disappeared. So yeah, Sunny wants to stay away from Mesa so he can continue to escape from his trauma. All in all though, there still hasn't been anything too major about Sunny yet. I guess we are still in the beginning of the game. All things come in due time though, and eventually, the truth will be revealed. Sunny enters his home for the night, hoping for a peaceful homecoming, but today's just not his day. What he comes home to is a house full of spiders, another one of his fears he dreads so much. From here you can pretty much explore around a bit, and you'll notice the door to Sunny's backyard is flooded with spiders and blocked off. A door where Sunny says there's nothing here, and at the bottom of the stairs what seems like a pile of hair rather than the spiders all over the place currently, which disappears when interacted with. And finally, the door to the right of the stairs is also blocked off. So what can we make of all of these small details? Well, we know Sunny is currently in a... Man, I don't even know what to call this. An episode, I guess. Well, we know what he's experiencing right now is due to fear and trauma, and we also know that Sunny likes to block out things, especially and specifically things to do with his trauma. So basically what this all implies is that the things Sunny or his fears block out here all have to do with his trauma, showing that after experiencing reality for the first time in years, slowly but surely the truth is slowly revealing itself to him, whether he likes it or not. Of course he still tries to escape, but at this point we all know it's inevitable. I mean, why else would he have paid $20 for this game for the boy not to solve his trauma? Oh yeah, that exists. Anyway, in short, the fear Sunny feels is causing hints of his trauma to resurface, and though he tries to run from it, reality is inevitable, especially since he decided to return to it once more. One way or the other, he will have to face the truth. But for now, he must literally face his fears once more against this giant spider. Oh yeah, also before the fight begins, there's just something at the top of the stairs that turns to Marie and then disappears, so like keep that in mind. Okay, anyway, the spider. So like the last fear, Sunny attacks to no avail until the mysterious voice comes again and teaches him how to focus. And once he does so, the fear disappears and his house is normal again. Thank God. I noticed something here, however. The thing Sunny learned to overcome his fear is focus. The voice stating, it seems like there's a lot going on. You need to block out all the little things and figure out what's important. Which, yeah, is indeed focusing, but it's also exactly what Sunny needs after such a hectic day in the real world. Sunny was probably so stressed about going out for the first time in years. Ari's change in the way she acts, how broken Basil is, going against the hooligans, and so much more is probably eating away at his mind, which is no good. But then he remembers the focus just enough to get him to bed for the night, which may show there's more to his mysterious voice than just a simple game mechanic. It may be someone or something else trying to help him in his darkest times. After all, we have seen some supernatural activity in Omori, which in this case is when he's experiencing his fears. Or it may be a subconscious mind trying to help him, whether it be old memories of him being taught these things or just him knowing what he should be doing at this time. But most likely the voice he hears is Marie's voice, specifically memories of Marie's voice. At least that's what I personally think. And it would make sense. Marie was the type to try to guide and help others when they were having trouble. I mean, her headspace counterpart literally does just this all the time. But also, she is his older sister. I'm sure most older siblings would guide and help their younger siblings when they're going through hard times. And if we jump ahead a bit in the game, we know Sunny and Marie were planning on playing in a recital, and Sunny learning to calm down and focus definitely seemed like things Marie would teach him in order to help him practice and be prepared for said recital. Anyway though, after Sunny focuses, his fear disappears. He decides it's about time to hit the hay and go to bed and return to his own happy little world once more. Omori / Sunny is back in headspace and Basil is still missing. What a surprise. So they continue to look for him. The first thing that kind of pops out right away is Ari's sudden attachment to Omori, which seems to be completely the opposite of what she was like in the real world, which is most likely just another method of escapism Sunny has decided to take by making Ari more of a friend rather than the Ari that hates him now. So the gang decides to take Marie's advice and head to the left of the slum where Firefly Forest lies, which is infested with spiders. But Omori and Hiro both decide to face their fears for their missing friend Basil, and once again Omori is able to overcome the same fear Sunny overcame earlier. And then there's a lot of nothing that contributes to Omori/Sunny's character here until you get to the Lost Forest. Lost Forest. I don't know why I said it that way. The first thing you encounter here is Daddy Longlegs, and the first thing he says is Lost Forest is where you find things that you never knew were lost, or perhaps were forgotten for a reason, which is already a major implication he is making towards Sunny's escapism and his repression of his past memories. This whole section talks about the dreamer, which is Sunny of course, and the origin of his world, which is Headspace. When the player is walking through the maze, he talks about how Omori is running away from the right path, blinding himself on purpose so he doesn't have to face this truth. But most importantly, he tells him that no matter what, his own lies will fail, and the darkness of the truth will emerge eventually. I think this is very interesting, considering this not only in Sunny's mind, but also in Headspace, his own escape from this very thing. Perhaps it might be a representation of how Sunny truly feels about his escapism methods. He knows that he's running away from the truth, but no matter what he tries, it will eventually come back to him. And yet, despite this, he continues to do so, even if he knows it's the right thing to do. This is the part where all the question from Daddy Longlegs comes in. He repeatedly asks the group, but probably more specifically Omori, why they keep going down the wrong path and how much longer can they continue to do so in order to hide the truth. If this really is Sunny's own thoughts about himself, we can clearly see he's questioning his own methods and realizes he has no answer. At this point, he doesn't even know why he's making himself suffer so much, nor how much longer he can keep this up before something terrible happens. And honestly, that must be a terrifying thought for him, knowing that his escape can't hold up for much longer. Another thing I want to take note of is the fact that suddenly secrets of the truth are slowly but surely creeping into Sunny's mind, specifically after he starts to go outside and breaks the escapism cycle. For now, it's only small details showing up, but it's enough to show that Sunny is actually breaking free from his escapism, albeit a very small amount, which means he's also going against Omori, his very counterpart that fully wants to escape from the truth, no matter what. This is obviously a huge step in Sunny's recovery, but it will for sure leave room for a lot of internal conflict in the future. Once you reach the end of Lost Forest, you meet Daddy Longlegs once more, and is prepared with a whole speech in which he tells the story of the origins of his world, aka Headspace and Whitespace and all of the other spaces. To summarize, it all started with just the dreamer and his room, which we can assume is Sunny and Whitespace. One day he got bored of Whitespace, so he decided to create a door that is currently there and explore other worlds. But eventually he ended up in a world unlike any other, full of darkness and secrets. He did not like this world, so he tried to seal it away by placing the other worlds on top of it. Still though, despite his best efforts, the darkness never went away. It always lingered, whether he liked it or not. In his words, what the dreamer had created was something he could not be a part of, something outside himself. So, in order to get rid of the darkness, the dreamer did so in the only way he could, which was to forget it, become so ignorant of it he never acknowledged its existence or even his own. He chose to forget himself so that he could never face it again, and that's how we ended up where we are now. No matter what though, the darkness still grows. As he says, no bandage can stifle an eternal wound, and forgetful the dreamer may be of his peril, a peril never forgets to be. At the end of the day, only the dreamer can set this world free and save himself from his blissful ignorance. So, what does this story tell us? Well, first of all, I feel it's a very important lore that tells us more about Sunny and the origins of his escapism and the struggles that came with it. But it also tells us the lengths Sunny went to just to hide from his trauma. He literally has willingly chosen to forget who he really is just to not be reminded of it. Like, this is serious levels of escapism. Like, my dude, Sunny, you need to get therapy like right now, right? Like, this is not okay. And the worst part is, even after all of that, it's still not enough. He still can't completely forget the truth, meaning that he's pretty much forget himself for nothing. Honestly, That's just sad. It really shows us how grim the situation is here for Sunny. I mean, knowing the truth, it's understandable the lengths he'd go to just try to forget it. But man, it's just depressing what Sunny has had to go through. Years of denial, trauma, escapism, and yet it seems like it was all for nothing at this point. And this whole section in the Lost Forest really helps show just how desperate this whole thing is for Sunny. But at the end, it still gives everyone hope by letting him know he's in control and he can change his future, but only if he decides to and if he's willing to face the consequences that come with it. After the Lost Forest, the story once again diverges from the main plot and focuses on Omori and his gang's fun little adventures, especially with Sweetheart's whole show going on. Eventually, they end up fighting Sweetheart, and afterwards a gigantic hole opens up where the show took place, probably because Space Husband blew it up. Omori goes up to the hole and jumps down, the rest of the gang unable to follow him all the way there. He ends up in a place known as the Lost Library, which is, you guessed it, an abandoned library. In here there are several books, but not just any kind of books. They're books containing fragments of Sunny's memories. There's also Marie's spirit walking around, almost like she's guiding Sunny towards the truth. The thing that stands out here the most is the fact that some of Sunny's happiest memories are lost in the Lost Library. It shows that in his attempt to forget himself and also the truth, he's also making himself forget all the happy moments in his life, which is probably why Marie's spirit may be guiding him towards them here, to try and show him that he's missing out on life and convince him to take a better path. Seeing this might actually have quite an impact on Sunny. I mean, seeing all the damage he's done to himself and knowing it's wrong and life could be way better, especially with his sister's spirit trying to guide him out of this, it may just be the deciding factor that makes him want to start pursuing a better life again, to once again begin to live his life. At the end of the room, Omori looks through a hole, sees Basil, and finally returns to white space, where he stabs himself to wake up back in the real world. Sunny awakens once more in the real world, once again hearing some pretty loud knocking coming from the front door. I wonder who that could be. Sunny opens the door and of course it's our boy, the one and only, you already know who it is, Kel! Top of the morning, chillin'! And he basically invites us to run errands with him. Well, anything's fun with Kel, so let's go! Okay, we got everything and now we go into Kel's house, which we do, and we avoid getting in trouble for now. So all seems well. But then Kel's mom tells us someone at the door wants to see us. So we go back downstairs to find out Polly is at the door. And she tells us that Basil has gone missing. So we ask for permission to look for him, which Kel's mom grants. So we go look for Basil. Sunny and Kel head to the park and near the trees where Basil was last spotted, and he seems to be nowhere around. Until he starts shouting for help from a nearby area, and Kel recognizes it as their old hangout spot. So Sunny and Kel head there to see what's going on. They arrive at the scene and see Basil surrounded by Aubrey and the hooligans, being what seems to be bullied by them once more. The boys show up and they are not letting this slide, but the hooligans want to defend their turf. But Kel is like, nah bro, this used to be our spot. And the hooligans get mad and literally threaten us with violence, like, bro, is that not illegal? Anyway, wait, Kel, what are you doing? Why are you agreeing to a fight? Oh wait, it's to protect Basil. Okay, just make sure they don't hit me. Alright then, that was chaotic. The fight ends and the hooligans decide to head home, although I think they should head to the doctor after getting pepper sprayed, but Aubrey decides to stay put. Kim leaves and then Aubrey screams in frustration, asking Sunny and Kel why they keep coming back into her life, even though she doesn't want them in it anymore. Kel tells her that they just want her to stop bullying Basil and that they all used to be friends before all of this. Aubrey says they think she's messed up, but she calls them messed up too, asking them where any of them were when Marie died. Well, Aubrey, I think Sunny was a little busy being depressed. Aubrey then runs up to Basil and calls him the worst after what he did. Basil tries to reconcile with her, but she suddenly turns around, yells at Basil to get away, and pushes him into the lake behind him. Aubrey seems regretful of her actions, but it's too late and Kel had seen enough. He goes up to Aubrey and scolds her for her actions, and after tells Sunny to go into the lake and save Basil. Me! With haste and some hesitation, Sunny dives into the lake to save his old friend. He finds himself somehow back in his house upstairs with the red windows and everything. It's safe to say he is once again facing one of his fears. Sunny starts heading down the stairs again, and this time Marie's there to guide him. They slowly go down together in the darkness, Marie getting closer to him in the process, and eventually they reach a knife. Marie, explain. It turns out Sunny has not literally fought his fear yet, so yeah, it's about time for that. Again, Sunny's normal attacks don't do anything to it, and the mysterious voice, aka most likely Marie, encourages him, telling him that he has to keep going, no matter how impossible it seems. Hearing this, Sunny remembers to persist, which ultimately ends up being what he needs to win the battle. Afterwards, he has what seems to be a hallucination of being saved by Marie, but when he wakes up, he finds that it was saved by Kel's brother, Hiro. Hiro advises them to take Basil somewhere warm quickly, and Kel says to take him home. Aubrey tries to disrupt them, but Kel quickly stops her from doing so, and so, Kel and Hiro and Sunny all take Basil home after a wild day. Obviously, there's quite a bit of stuff that goes down in this section, but let's focus on the big one, Sunny's adventure into the lake. There's one major change in Sunny that stands out here, and that's the fact that he decides to save Basil. Beforehand, on 3 days left, Sunny had a chance to save Basil, or at least help him out while Basil was in a very rough state, but he decided not to and just left. However, here he decided to make a change and actually attempt to save his old friend. Even if he did fail, it marks a huge turning point in Sunny's life. It shows that after years of isolation, escapism, and repression, he is finally starting to abandon all of that and change for the better. He decided that now he wants to start living in the real world once more, which is huge. With this, he can now finally start to work on his trauma and overall just start living a better life. So then the boy obviously enters the water and tries to save Basil, and then he fights his fear like always, learning how to persist in the process. Now I think the most important part here is the fact that Sunny learns to persist, especially considering what I just said earlier. If Sunny truly wants to face and overcome his trauma and begin to live in the real world again, he'll have to learn and keep going no matter how impossible it seems, because trust me, it's going to be a very long and hard road for him. And if he can't persist, he may end up falling down that same escapism road again. But now that he remembered how to with Marie's guidance, things are looking pretty hopeful for him. Sunny, Kel, Hiro, and Basil all arrive at Basil's house and help Polly take him inside. Kel tells Hiro about the whole situation and Hiro can't seem to believe it. He even starts doubting if he should have left, but Kel reassures him and that they decide to go home. Don't forget about the high five though. They arrive home to Kel/Hiro's house and reunite with their parents, and it's also time for dinner, so the gang decides to eat together. While they're heating up the food, Hiro encourages Sunny about moving, and they reminisce about the times they spent at Sunny's house. Once the food is heated up, they move to the living room, and Kel remembers Sunny has Basil's photo album, so they all look through it together. Afterwards, Kel tells Hiro about the whole Aubrey and the photo album situation, and Hiro notices Marie isn't in any of the photos in the album currently. Then Hiro asks Sunny to see his house one last time before they leave, which they all agree to, but first, Hiro must find a way to convince his mother. And coincidentally, his mom comes down as soon as Kel tells him that, and his dad. And he succeeds, but his mom didn't seem too happy, so Hiro being Hiro gets some flowers to cheer her up and all goes well. Finally, they decide to head into Sunny's house for the first time in 4 years. They enter the house and Kel and Hiro notice how empty the whole place is. Kel checks outside, but it seems too dark to check out the treehouse, so they hold off on that for now. But Kel gets the genius idea of sleeping over, and eventually Hiro is convinced and agrees to do so. They go to the hallway where the stairs are, and Hiro recalls the closet on the left, which Sunny doesn't see, and the piano room to the right, which Sunny has refused to go into as of now. Hiro decides to go into the piano room, and Kel and Sunny follow him, quite casually might I add, which is kinda surprising considering how much Sunny refused to go in there before. Hiro plays a little song and then asks Sunny if he still plays the violin, but he doesn't see it anywhere around. Hiro remembers a certain song Sunny and Mori used to play together all the time, but he can't seem to remember the name of it. Kel seems to be tired and they all decide to sleep in Sunny's room, Hiro mentioning Sunny used to hate sleeping alone. It's a small detail, but I think this kind of adds to what I said earlier about Sunny's fears not showing up when he's with others. I made an entire video of it, but basically the premise of it is Sunny's fears don't seem to pop up when he's with others, the exception being Basil, which may show that Sunny doesn't like being alone at all, and he might actually have a fear of being alone, which in turn makes his other fears and trauma pop up when he is alone, which is the only time they seem to appear, other than with Basil of course. So yeah, Sunny probably does not like being alone. Anyway, the gang heads up to Sunny's room, and Hiro and Kel somehow already have an entire bed for it set up. Kel gives Hiro the gift they had bought for him earlier, and then he quickly proceeds to fall asleep. Hiro thanks Sunny for letting them stay over and apologizes for not being there for him more, but he's glad Sunny has mostly stayed the same. Hiro then says goodnight to Sunny and heads to sleep as well. And so, Sunny also heads to bed, ending quite a hectic day for the gang and starting the beginning of the end of Sunny's stay in faraway town. Omori arrives at Headspace to no one waiting for him, and I mean no one. Not only that, we didn't even get to do anything in white space. Now I'm gonna theorize for a bit here. So, we know white space is the ultimate escape for Sunny / Omori, the one place where you can achieve absolute ignorance towards everything. Also, the characters of Headspace are all meant to appeal to him, as we saw with Aubrey earlier and the disappearance of Basil after he mentioned something about Sunny's trauma. Suddenly though, both of these seem to be gone, or at least out of immediate reach. Well, I don't really know about white space since it was in the cutscene but skipped in terms of gameplay. It is a bit of a reach, but it may show that Sunny is truly trying to stop his ways of escapism. I mean, he seems to want to spend no time in white space at all, and all the dream versions of the characters are all gone, or at least out of reach. This may be on purpose due to Sunny not wanting to escape anymore, and he's trying to get rid of his unhealthy coping mechanisms. It's just a theory based on my observations though, so take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, Omori heads north to their tree slope and finds Marie standing there alone. Marie tells him that everyone has disappeared, I can see that, and they may be across the water. Marie invites him to join in a search to look for them, which he agrees to. With the help of Marie, Omori overcomes his fear of drowning and they both begin to swim north. They come across a bridge and start walking across it, and Marie tells Omori she's proud of him for overcoming his fear, but there's still one thing he can't seem to overcome. Finally, they reach the end of the bridge where a curtain lies. Marie tells Omori that it seems he's forgotten something important and asks if he's okay with that. She gets closer to the curtain and says he's seen this before, the last time they went at the lake. Honestly, I don't know what she's referring to here, but maybe it's the fear encounter at the lake. She admits she shouldn't have come, but it gets lonely without everyone. She says it's not her place to say, but she hopes Sunny is still there. She really misses him. Marie then turns into her spirit form, says goodbye, and disappears into the window. Omori then gets surrounded by some things and goes into the whirlpool that opened up where Marie disappeared. I think here is where the contrast between Omori and Sunny starts to become more apparent. We finally see Sunny / Omori accept some thoughts and ideas of his trauma into his mind rather than repressing them, as we see Marie is not banished once she mentions Sunny's last fear. Also, Marie is finally able to move beyond the picnic area she has been restrained to all this time. And we also hear Sunny's real name be mentioned in Headspace for the first time. All of these things are completely against what Omori exists to do, repress. They might not be completely separate yet, but for sure the gap between them is slowly widening. Another thing is the fear Omori feels after Marie disappears. I think the reason he feels scared has to be because of what just happened. It's clear that his escapism methods are no longer working, and the truth is slowly starting to leak out from the depths of Sunny's mind. It's inevitable. So of course he feels scared. He's very close to failing at doing exactly what he was created and continues to exist to do. But also, he might be scared of the consequences that come with the truth reveal, and how it may affect him and Sunny. For now though, he'll continue to look for his friends. Omori finds himself heading down the ladder, and he finds the M key at the bottom. Get it? Cause Marie. Anyway, after exiting this area, Omori finds himself at the underwater highway. There isn't really much to do here, so he enters the taxi and heads to the last resort, where he finds our boy, Kel. Kel tells more about how they all got tricked into signing contracts, and yeah, this is all deviating from the main plot again. But then heading a bit north, you find Marie again, except this time she doesn't seem to be a spirit, just a normal headspace version. Still though, Omori seems to be not happy to see her. I mean, that's what she literally says. Then Kel goes on about how they're gonna get their friends back, and then he can't seem to remember what for, until Marie reminds him that they're looking for Basil. Afterwards, Kel and Omori begin to hunt for their friends, so they can reunite. They're not actually hunting them down. Okay, two small things here but worth pointing out. Number one is Omori being not happy to see Marie according to her. Considering everything that happened just beforehand, this makes sense. If he wants to repress trauma, the last thing he wants to see is the very person who was just mentioning it not too long ago. Secondly, we see Kel start to forget about Basil, which might seem normal for him, sorry Kel, but in reality, this shows Omori's repression of Basil in full effect. It's finally starting to kick in for his friends, and they're starting to completely forget about him. Now, the real fight between Sunny and Omori is beginning. We have Sunny, who's trying to stop repressing and escaping and wants to live in the real world again, against Omori, who wants to continue escaping and avoid the consequences of the truth and its reveal. Both are clearly rebelling against each other, and it's only a matter of time before this battle heats up. From this point, the plot once again starts to stray away from the main plot and starts to focus on regrouping the main party. As you can imagine, not much happens here for Omori / Sunny's character, so we gotta bust out the time skip portal once more. So the gang fights Mr. Jossum, Pluto expanded, and all is resolved. They got the gang back. Now they can return to the quest for finding Basil. They regroup at the entrance, Kel high-fives everyone in sight, and they start remembering more about Basil. Or at least try to. It seems like they're slowly forgetting little details about him. But then they come up with the plan to draw him and ask around. But that doesn't go too well either, as you can see from the drawing. In the end, they just have to go look for him themselves in the deep well. The gang crosses the underwater highway and arrives at the bridge that guides them towards the deeper well. They find some ground near the end of the bridge, and Kel says Basil would have really liked it here. Then Hiro realizes he has forgotten what Basil looks like, and Kel was the same, and so was Aubrey, but they continue to look for him. Eventually they meet a whale called Humphrey, and the gang once again gets distracted with another plot. At the end of it, you fight the slime girls and also Humphrey, aka the most annoying boss in the game. And once you beat them both, you get spat out, or I guess blown out. And you also get some keys, so pretty cool. The gang calms down after what just happened, but none of them can remember they were looking for Basil, or just Basil in general. At this point, it's pretty clear Omori is repressing Basil, not just for himself, but probably the entirety of Headspace, which he's probably hoping will affect Sunny and make him avoid the truth or even forget about it. Gathering the last key reveals that the phrase in the Hangman game says, "Welcome to Black Space." And it also shows Basil's Headspace house in complete ruins with a giant black hole in the middle, something floating on top of it. Omori enters the whirlpool where Humphrey once was and arrives at the map of truth. Here we learn more about Headspace and the truth. It says that no matter what, the end of Omori's journey always leads him back here. And it mentions how the truth has been moved several times, all of them being places Omori's gone to: the lighthouse, the lost library, and the barn house. No matter how many times it's concealed, Basil will always find it, and Marie will always guide Omori to it. We learn of the repetition of Headspace and how Omori's gang has died several times, but every time they do, they are revived, leaving the former version neglected. Marie was given the picnic blanket to stay safe and never suffer the fate of dying again. The truth is the closest it's ever been to Omori's safe space. The voice asks, can he seal it away once again? Omori reaches the end of it and finds another curtain. Tells him that the end of his journey will lead to suffering, but he cannot continue if he doesn't face this. That this form is evil, but he will not see that if he doesn't fight it. When Omori's intentions become hazy, the world is enveloped in a fog, as we've seen before. When that time comes, go to Basil's house and attempt to rewrite his fate. This particular area has a lot of information and therefore a lot to talk about. The first point about the truth being inevitable is something I've already talked about a few times throughout this, so I'll just skip over that one. The first one I do want to focus on though is the fact that the truth has been moved several times, each time being places we've previously been to. Now if Sunny is in control of Omori and not the other way around, it shows Sunny has been seeking the truth this whole time, but either Omori or something in him has prevented him from doing so in order to protect him from it. If Omori is the one in control, however, I guess it can mean Sunny is preventing himself from seeing the truth, which is why he moves it or stops the dream as soon as he gets a little too close. Although considering how he's changed and at this point wants to overcome it, this kinda seems unlikely. Either way, this is just another form of escapism, moving the truth to prevent Sunny from witnessing it and having to suffer by seeing it once more. Next is a cycle of headspace and a constant revival of Omori's friends. I want to say that this may be a reference to his friends in the real world. The voice says how Omori has forsaken them, yet they still want his care. This is similar to what has happened in the real world. Omori says Sunny trapped himself in headspace and his home, ultimately abandoning all of his friends and leaving them alone despite the fact that they clearly never wanted to separate from each other. And the longer this headspace cycle went on, the more all of his friends would suffer, kinda like the Forsaken headspace versions. This might show Sunny himself feels guilty for abandoning his friends, especially seeing how Aubrey and Basil turned out after everything. But the fact that he can acknowledge this shows there's still hope for him to turn things around. Marie being given the picnic blanket is pretty much also another form of escapism. Like the voice said, he gave it so we would never see her suffer again. The final thing before the curtain is the fact that the truth is the closest it's ever been to Neighbor's room. I think it's just a representation of how Sunny/Omori is the closest to the truth they've ever been. And also the fact that it's at Basil's house shows that he's somehow involved in Sunny's trauma. At the curtain, the voice gives him some genuinely good advice, but the part I want to point out is the fact that the world becomes foggy when his intentions become unclear. First of all, it applies to a lot of what I said earlier when the world became foggy after he entered headspace by himself and eventually with Marie. But also, it confirms that Sunny is indeed trying to change and willing to question and even stop his hikikomori ways. And the only thing stopping him from doing so is Omori himself, which is why the voice mentions he is evil. And Sunny never realized that until he decided to go against him. The war for control rages on deep inside Sunny's mind. We have reached the very end of headspace. The world has become foggy. There's only one place we can go now. The route to Basil's house changes, the forest enveloping it slowly dying off. The red footsteps leading to Basil's house. Omori follows them inside. Basil's house is still in ruins, the water surrounding it now red with hands coming off of it. Aubrey is scared and wants to go back, but now this is inevitable. Inside the house, the shadowy figure of Basil seems to go into the giant hole and Omori follows soon after. Omori lands in an area completely black and white. He walks forward for a while and comes across Marie in a coffin. Once he gets close enough, yeah, that. A black door appears where Marie was and Omori enters. Welcome everyone to your favorite part of the game. This is Black Space, the very depths of Sunny's mind. You cannot get much lower than this, if you can at all. As you can tell, it's similar to White Space, except it's the opposite color shown by the name, and it has a lot more doors. 19 to be exact, one for each letter in Welcome to Black Space. There's a lot that happens and a lot to say about Black Space, so let's take it one thing at a time. The first few Black Space rooms seem to be random yet very eerie rooms, almost as if these were areas Omori could or even would spend in before Headspace. It's very possible that some of the rooms of Black Space were some kind of prototype for Headspace, like he tried to make them all happy and colorful, but but they were obviously failed attempts, especially the disco area. This one's all colorful and everything, but for sure not as fun as the real Headspace. So maybe it was scrapped or banished by Omori for not being good enough, or because it could not hide the truth very well. The one that can really support this though is Neighbor's area. I mean, looking at it, it is almost an exact copy of the real Headspace. Not only that, the fact that it's one of the last rooms makes it seem as just one of the last prototypes before the real Headspace was made, but went unused due to how violent it can be. Next thing I want to point out is the backyard area, where something, not the actual something, calls Omori / Sunny a liar over and over, and also the actual something saying I love you to Sunny. It's a very small detail, but it starts to reveal that maybe the truth may have something to do with something he did. Now we get to the part where we find Headspace Basil in Black Space several times, and he gets killed every single time. We've talked enough about Omori wanting to get rid of Basil, so I'm pretty sure this is just another case of that. Omori is quite literally trying to kill off Basil in order to get rid of evidence of the truth, or at least this version of Basil. As we heard previously, each cycle there's a new set of friends Omori makes, so obviously if you can get rid of the Basil that remembers the truth and make a completely fresh new version with all the aspects of Basil without knowing the truth, he'll do just that, which is exactly what he seems to be doing now. Another thing all over Black Space is Stranger, the shadowy figure that looks like Basil, and he says a lot of things, all seemingly directed at Sunny rather than Omori. Based on what he says, I'm pretty sure this may be Basil's actual thoughts, or at least what Sunny thinks he would say or think, especially the ones in the actual rooms. For example, in the rain area he says, I miss you Sunny, you're always someone I can depend on to listen. Yeah, 100% a thing Basil would say. I'm thinking this shows more of Sunny wanting to save and help Basil, especially if this is the way Sunny thinks Basil is thinking. He's clearly seeing him in a more positive light. On the other end, however, we have Omori constantly killing Headspace Basil, which is quite a big contrast between the two. I think it's safe to say at this point Omori and Sunny are practically two different people, both rebelling against each other and both fighting for control over this body. But I think the main takeaway of all of Black Space is demonstrating just how broken Sunny's mind currently is. Just look at all of Black Space. It's just straight up all insane. Nothing seems to make sense at all. It all seems to be just a bunch of stuff just jumbled up and thrown into a room. Most of it being creepy or eerie in some kind of way. At the end of it all, I think it's meant to show the effects everything has had on Sunny's mind for the past 4 years. And how at this point it kind of seems to be unstable, especially now that he's trying to change the way he lives. So, the only door left at the end is the door covered in an ominous red light. Entering it leads Omori to the snowy place with the church at the top. Inside the church is dark and ominous, and in there is also Basil and the Stranger. The Stranger tells Sunny that the truth is here, and that they can face it together, and afterwards disappears into Basil. Omori approaches Basil, and Basil asks Omori for forgiveness, before being consumed by this black web. Omori follows Basil in to save him. They end up in a small room with a sliding door, an ominous red light glowing through it. Basil saying there's something out there that's calling them. Basil ends up getting dragged out the door. Omori follows. They both enter Red Space. A blood trail leads up north. There are several fingers and corpses of Basils around here, presumably previous versions. The current Basil is being held up by red hands. Omori approaches. Basil continues to plead for forgiveness. The hands continue to hurt. Basil begs for help. Omori pulls out his knife and kills Basil. Omori walks over his corpse and up some stairs on his own. He arrives at his throne of red hands. Sunny may want to live in the real world, but Omori clearly disagrees with that. Sunny wakes up falling out of bed, completely shocked at what he just witnessed. Honestly, same. Hiro is noticeably out of bed, and also a familiar tune can be heard from the piano room. So Sunny heads into the room and finds Marie's spirit playing the piano. We learn the song she's playing is the one they were going to play at their recital, and that Sunny hated how Marie would lock herself away, practicing the song all the time. Also, Sunny had trouble keeping up with Marie, and she apologizes for it, saying she might have pushed him too hard. They never got to play the recital together, so Marie asks if he wants to play it now. Suddenly, Hiro barges into the room, saying he swore he heard music coming from in there. Hiro tells Sunny he must miss Marie a lot, and even he still thinks about her every day. However, he could never understand why she left the way she did. Even still, he knows Murray would want all of them to be happy. Hiro then tells Sunny to get some rest. He'll join in a bit. Sunny leaves the room, but upon re-entering it, he finds Hiro crying on the piano and backs away, deciding not to interfere. Sunny goes upstairs and decides to sleep for the rest of the night. A small section, but a few things to say. Number 1, we learn of Sunny and Murray's recital, and the frustrations that came with it, Murray even apologizing for pushing them too hard. We also learned that Murray died in a way Hiro could never understand why she did. And finally, Sunny backs away when he sees Hiro crying about Murray. It's just a few small details, but the pieces of the truth are surely starting to be put together. Perhaps even Sunny realizes this, which is why he backs away from Hiro. Sunny wakes up to a brand new and shiny day. You could even call it sunny. Hiro walks in the room and greets Sunny, letting him know he's finished his chores. What a hero. Okay, I'll stop. And he's also made breakfast, and Kel is already devouring it. Someone rings the doorbell. Turns out we had that this whole time, and Kel goes to answer it, spitting out his food in the process. Unexpectedly, it's actually Kim at the door. She says Aubrey isn't acting normally and blames them for it. Kel gets angry, but Hiro calms the situation down and convinces Kel to help. So they all head to Aubrey's house to see what's up. Hiro knocks on Aubrey's door, but there's no response. They remember they've never actually been in her house, and then Hiro realizes the door is open, so the gang just walks on in and sees the state of Aubrey's household. It's not very pretty to say the least. Everyone goes upstairs and goes into Aubrey's room, and she's quite shocked witnessing this. Hiro tells her they just want to make sure she's okay and asks her about what happened yesterday. She says nothing happened, but Kel angrily responds saying she pushed Basil. They argue for a bit, and then Hiro jumps in to calm them down. He then notices the missing photos of Murray, and Aubrey says it's all she has left of her. Hiro says it's still not right for her to take them from Basil, but she says it doesn't matter since she threw the album away. But Kel and Sunny retrieved it earlier, so all is good. They all decide to put Murray's photos back where they belong. Now that the album is complete, everyone reminisces on the memories they made together. After, Aubrey apologizes for acting so badly towards everyone, and Kel apologizes too for not being a good friend. And now everyone is friends again, but there's still one more that remains alone. Basil. They all go to his house to check on him, but it turns out at the moment he's at the hospital visiting his grandma, who's currently in urgent care. The gang decides to come back later for him, but for now, they have to wait. They think about what to do, and visiting the treehouse is one of the ideas that pops up, and they decide to go later. Now I'll admit there's a lot of side content that I didn't go over because as you can see, this video is already very long. In terms of the script, I am on page 20. But there is one thing we certainly cannot skip. Anyway, after some time passes and the sun begins to set, the gang heads towards Sunny's house to see the treehouse one last time. They enter Sunny's house and it hits Aubrey that Sunny is really moving. Hiro said there's a lot of unsaid things over the past few years, but at least now they could face this together. They head into the backyard and come across a certain tree stump. Everyone recalls what happened at that tree and the events of the day it happened. They were preparing for Sunny and Marie's recitals, but when they came home, their lives changed forever. They continue onward and head inside the treehouse. They all start reminiscing on the good times they had together there, and Sunny finds the last missing photo from the photo album. On the back of it, there's a key, and don't forget, it's in the toy box written below. Aubrey notices this and points it out, and they all put the photo album together once and for all, and look through it one last time. After, Hiro and Aubrey both say they miss Marie, and Cal tries to cheer them up, but Aubrey rushes outside of the treehouse without warning after Hiro mentions Basil. Aubrey's found the tree stump they were at earlier, and here she opens up to her old friends about everything that happened and all she felt over the past few years. At the end of it, Aubrey breaks down crying. Hiro and Kel go to comfort her, but Sunny backs away. But all the friends make up and apologize to each other, and Hiro and Kel gather everyone around, and they all have an emotional group hug. Then they all decide to go to the one who needs them the most right now, Basil. Sunny and friends arrive at Basil's house, but learn from Polly that he's locked himself in his room and won't say anything now. His friends go in and try to help, but no matter what, Basil refuses to say anything, so they all decide to stay over for him in this hard time. They all hang out in the living room until nighttime, and once it is nighttime, all the friends start saying their goodbyes to Sunny, saying that they'll always be friends. Hiro thanks him for everything, especially for leaving his house after so long, and encourages him about moving away. Aubrey asks him to visit once in a while, and finally, they all slowly fall asleep. Sunny awakens in white space and finds Omori and his little base there. Sunny goes up to the light bulb, takes it, and smashes it completely. Afterwards, he finds himself surrounded by darkness, except for a spotlight with something in it. Sunny walks up to it, and the fight is initiated. Sunny attacks it, and it turns into his other fears, which he overcomes the same ways he has before. The fight goes on like this for a bit, Sunny using all the skills he's learned throughout the game to continue onward. After the third fear is defeated, something turns into something that's blurred. Sunny becomes afraid. He calms down, focuses, and sees a hanging body. His life feels in danger, but he continues to persist. No matter how hard it gets, how scared he feels, he just keeps going. He's ready to face the truth. Finally, he calms himself down and learns to overcome, which he does. As short as this fight is, it's a major moment of development for Sunny. As you can see, no matter how much he tries to attack it and fight his fears and trauma represented by something, it will do nothing to it. Fighting his trauma, denying that it exists, will never make it go away or make him feel any better. However, once he accepts it, accepts the fact that it's there and will probably always be there, he can finally begin to overcome it, which is exactly what this fight represents. Sunny is learning to overcome his trauma. The fight ends and now a light bulb stands where something once stood. Sunny goes in the light and is transported to a meadow. He walks north and finds a photo, and the gate in front of it. The photo is of a tree and in black and white. Once it's taken, the gate opens. A second gate and photo appears. It's another photo of the same tree. A bit more north, Sunny finds Basil standing in front of a giant tree. Basil is relieved he's finally here, but says maybe it's too late. He says the truth of that day will be hard to accept and tells Sunny to stay strong when seeing it. And finally, asks him to forgive him if he can. Even if he said it may be too late, he says there's still hope because Sunny is here. Sunny heads into the tree and begins reliving the truth. He finds himself in a living room like his own, 2 more photos scattered on the floor. One of a wall and another of Basil's reflection in the sliding door to Sunny's backyard as he's opening it. Sunny heads into the next room where there's tons of hospital beds and televisions lined up in rows. Here he finds a photo of himself crying on top of a bed, with someone on top of it, and another of him seemingly trying to wake up that same person, and finally another photo of him crying, hunched over on the side of the bed. Sunny then finds a person not breathing on one of the beds, which lights up a window leading to the next area. Now he's in a place similar to upstairs of his house with a very long staircase, with a photo near it. The photo is of Sunny carrying someone up the stairs. He goes down the stairs and finds the next photo of himself going down the stairs seeming heavily worried. He gets to the bottom and finds one more photo of a body at the end of the staircase. Upon taking it, he's instantly teleported to his bedroom, which seems to be at the time when this whole event went down. There's another photo right in front of him with a reassuring hand on Sunny's shoulder. The shadow of Basil tells him everything is going to be okay. Sunny leaves this room and finds himself in the backstage area with several more photos. The first is another of Sunny carrying a person, and once he does take it, an image of a hand losing a finger pops up for each picture that is taken. And Sunny seems to get in a much worse state each time. The next photo is Sunny carrying them down the stairs this time. Then it's one of the person. Then one of Basil covering his face with his hands, and Sunny crying in the background. The final photo here is of Sunny's broken violin at the bottom of the staircase. He's once again transported somewhere else, this time in a room full of instruments. The first photo here is of Marie and Sunny on top of the staircase. And the next is of both of them fighting. Again, he's teleported back to this area similar to the one before Red Space. The one and only photo here is Sunny pushing Marie down the stairs. The door outside opens and Sunny exits the room. He heads north and finds a photo of a jump rope. The next is of Basil holding said rope. The one after that is of Marie's hanging feet. The one after that is of Marie's hanging body. Sunny finds the last photo on a tree with a noose. Picking it up plays out the entire situation in chronological order. Sunny had grown frustrated with everything surrounding the recital, and when he reached his breaking point, he threw his violin down the stairs, breaking it completely. Upon hearing this, Marie goes up to him and starts scolding him. Sunny doesn't understand why she does so. He just wants to quit. Why can't Marie understand? Sunny tried to run away, but Marie blocked him, saying she isn't done talking. Sunny, in a sudden fit of rage, loses all sense and pushes her down the stairs. Marie lands on top of the broken violin, ending her life in an instant. Sunny tries to call out, but there's no response, so he decides to drag her upstairs to her bed so she can rest. Once she's in bed, he tries to call her name again, but still nothing. It sinks in for Sunny that she's gone, and he breaks down into tears, wanting to call for help but knowing he can't because of what he'd done. Unexpectedly, help arrives for him in the form of Basil, telling him everything is going to be okay. They both carry Marie's body outside, use a jump rope to tie her up, and stage her death as a suicide. Sunny looks up towards her and sees something he wishes he never looked at. With the truth now revealed, a lot of the stuff previously in the game now makes sense. His fear of heights, the fact that all of his fears take place at his home staircase, why he backed away from here when he was crying about Marie, why he protected Marie with a picnic blanket and headspace, and so many more small details start making sense with the truth revealed. But most importantly, it adds a whole nother aspect to Sunny's trauma, and that is guilt. Beforehand, we just knew he was traumatized, and it probably had to do with Marie's death, but all of a sudden, everything changed when we learned he was the very reason she died on that day. Knowing that, it makes a lot more sense why Sunny decided to shut himself away and repress all of his trauma for so many years, and even made an alternate world so he can forget it even more. He simply cannot accept that what he did was real. The the fact that he killed his sister, that it's his fault he and all of his friends suffered, that Marie suffered. He could not accept that, and denied not just his friends, but himself the truth, which in turn led to all of this repression and escapism for all these years. But now, he's decided to abandon all of that and finally face and relive the truth, which is exactly what he did here. It's been a long journey for him, but he's made a ton of progress and is definitely headed for a better life. Right now, we're reaching the end of his journey, and he still has a few obstacles he must overcome to end this once and for all. Sunny wakes up in the middle of the night at Basil's house, his friends all asleep around him. He heads towards Basil's room and decides to save him. Basil is glad to see Sunny, saying it's good to see him. He says when Marie fell, it couldn't have been Sunny. It must have been something behind him. He says Sunny is a good person and a good person wouldn't do something like that. Basil says after all this, Sunny's come back for him, but tomorrow, he's leaving him again. Basil erupts, asking him how he could do that. It's so mean. He then notices something all around him and says there's no way out of this, is there? Sunny then backs away but is blocked by something. Basil snaps again, tells Sunny to stop trying to leave him. Basil says he doesn't want to be alone. Not again. But Basil then shifts the blame to something again, saying Sunny wouldn't leave him. Something surrounds Basil, and Basil tells it to stay away, saying he'll protect Sunny from it. Basil says when something killed Marie and ruined all of his photos, he said nothing because he didn't want anyone to think it was Sunny's fault. Then he tells Sunny he'll get rid of something once and for all. Another something appears and forces Sunny closer to Basil. He says everything is going to be okay. Sunny gets dragged closer to him, and finally, a fight between the two initiates. In this fight, no matter what Sunny tries, he can't seem to use any skills he learned throughout the game. He has to fight Basil. They both start attacking each other, and Basil asks if he's selfish for doing this. He also asks Sunny if he hates him. Eventually, Sunny reaches his breaking point and becomes stressed out. Sunny and Basil continue to fight, now hitting even harder than before. Basil asks Sunny why won't he stop and stabs him in the eye with his pair of shears. The fight eventually ends with both of them passing out and eventually being taken to the hospital. A very painful section to say the least. We once again see Sunny choosing to save Basil, which is of course a good thing, but what happens after is what really stands out here. We see Sunny attempting to leave Basil a bit into the cutscene, and him unable to calm down or do anything during the fight, becoming stressed out in the process. Why is it that Sunny all of a sudden can't bring himself to calm down when facing Basil? Honestly, there's probably multiple reasons for this, but I think a major factor might be what happened before the fight. Basil constantly tries to take away the blame from Sunny and plays it onto something, despite the fact that Sunny's actions are his and his alone. Maybe with Basil saying all this and still being in denial, it could have rubbed off on Sunny and made him question everything, or at least instill some doubt in him, causing him to panic, and that's how we end up with him not being able to calm down. Or perhaps that whole situation was just so anxiety induced and he could not handle it, causing him to break down, or maybe even a mix of both. Either way, at the end of it all, this whole section just shows how broken both of these guys really are. And they've been pushed so far, it's led to them literally assaulting each other in an attempt to save one another. All we can hope now is that they're safe. Sunny wakes up in a dream version of faraway town. He walks around it and ends up at his house, finding Basil in front of it. Basil greets him, telling him he found his way back home. He apologizes to Sunny for causing so much trouble, adding that whenever he tries to help, he burdens Sunny instead. He says even if they bottle up the pain they feel, it all comes out somehow. He wants to say everything will be okay, but that's all up to Sunny now. He tells Sunny to trust in her friends to forgive them, and ends by saying he'll be cheering Sunny on, and by giving him a much needed hug. Sunny enters his house, remembering that it's in the toy box. I think here we see what Sunny thinks Basil would say to him, words of encouragement. It's a small thing, but I think it shows Sunny's willing to forgive him even after everything. Sunny goes inside his house and finds it in the state it was before it was all packed up and ready to move. He reminisces with several objects around the house and eventually ends up in the piano room where he finds Marie playing once again. Marie tells Sunny it's almost time and he's been through a lot. She says he's been running from this mistake for a long time now, but she tells him, "You'll forgive yourself, won't you?" She encourages him and tells him there's only one thing left to do now, and that she'll always be watching over him as long as he remembers her. Finally, Sunny heads to the closet room and unlocks the toy box, finding a broken violin and sheet music, the same ones from that day. Sunny then leaves his house and finds himself on Memory Lane. In Memory Lane, Sunny relives a few memories throughout his life, specifically one with his friends that ended up in the photo album. While going through all of these memories, the broken violin starts to mend itself. What this part shows is pretty similar to that of Lost Library, the great memories Sunny unintentionally repressed while repressing the truth. It shows that by sacrificing his memory of the truth, he would also sacrifice memories of all the good times with his friends. But now that he's accepted the truth, he remembers all of the good times again. And maybe the violin repairing itself is a representation of Sunny slowly becoming whole and himself again by reliving those memories. In the very final memory, we learn that Sunny's violin was a gift from all of his friends, showing how much they truly cared for him. And Sunny remembered how much he didn't want to disappoint his friends playing it. Sunny reaches the end of Memory Lane and ends up backstage with all of his friends waiting for him. Aubrey tells him after this, it's all up to him. She also tells him about how Sunny would always have time for her. Kel says people think he's dense, but he'll always be there for Sunny as long as he's okay with that. Hiro says it's been really hard for Sunny, but he has to put a bit of trust in them too. Kel says just because he's done something bad, it doesn't make him bad. Hiro says it might be easier to ignore problems, but it's okay to cry about them too. Life gets better, and Sunny can make that happen. They all turn to their current forms and continue. Aubrey says whatever happens next is Sunny's call. Hiro follows up saying they're here for him because Sunny wants them to be. Finally, Kel says they hope this isn't goodbye. Talking with them further will provide even more encouragement for Sunny if he needs it. This small part really shows how much Sunny's friends truly care for him. I mean, just look at all of the encouragement they're giving him. Even if it's just Sunny's imagination, it's definitely based off of something, right? But also, I think this shows Sunny finally trusting his friends to forgive him. He's even imagining Hiro saying to trust in them too. He acknowledges how much his friends care for him. All that's left now is actually telling them everything. Sunny walks up the stage's stairs, and with one last bit of encouragement from his friends, he heads up and readies himself to play the violin. The crowd is set, and Sunny plays his violin. After, Sunny is once again transported to white space, where he finds the one against everything he's trying to do, Omori. This is it, Sunny's final battle, the last frontier before finally breaking free from everything. Trauma, escapism, this cycle, fear, all of it. It all comes down to this. Sunny has a few new skills, a major one being Cherish. It heals him and he hears the words of his friends upon using it. Sunny truly believes in all of them now. The fight goes on for a bit, Omori not succumbing to death when he reaches 0 HP, and he becomes slightly distorted with red. From this phase, we get to hear Omori's dialogue, which is also Sunny's internal dialogue. It tells him he causes suffering yet does nothing, so he's earned nothing in return. His friends will never forgive him. They'll abandon him just like he did to them, and that's what he deserves. Honestly, it's really sad. These are the thoughts Sunny had and believed in for the past 4 years. He thought so low of himself and genuinely believed he deserved such terrible things. It's no wonder he stayed depressed and locked himself away for so long. He couldn't have asked for help without worrying about the consequences, and therefore he was simply stuck with these kinds of thoughts constantly for years. It's sad, especially since he truly, genuinely believed in them, but now he's fighting back. Omori does not succumb. He becomes more red and the background changes to red space. Omori calls him selfish, saying he doesn't want people to depend on him. Omori calls him a liar, and he tells Sunny he's less than useless. Omori even tells him he doesn't even deserve to live. Omori does not succumb. He says Sunny let his friends believe in the lie to protect himself. Omori calls him a liar again. And when his friends see the truth, they'll hate him as much as he hates himself. He says telling the truth would make him untrustworthy. It's hopeless. It would be better to just die. Omori does not succumb. Even more distortion appears. Omori tells Sunny he killed Marie. She loved him and he killed her. Hiro loved her and he killed her. Aubrey loved her and he killed her. Kel loved her and he killed her. Basil loved her and he killed her. He loved her and he killed her. Finally, he bitterly says, "You should just die." It's just as we'd heard earlier. Omori seems pure and good, but once Sunny starts to fight him, we see his true nature. He's the very embodiment of Sunny's self-hatred. Sure, he tried to help Sunny cope and escape from the truth, and it did work, but in the end, it was never gonna truly help him. And yet, even after fighting him for so long, Sunny can't seem to truly defeat him. Eventually, Sunny falls, unable to continue to fight. He has the option to continue or give up, but Sunny decides to persist and stands once more. This time, all he can do is play. And honestly, all I can really do here is let this masterpiece play out. Sunny finishes one last duet with Marie and finally says goodbye. Sunny and Omori embrace, accepting the existence of one another and their differences. Omori disappears, leaving it all up to Sunny. Sunny walks up to a white door, bows to his audience, and exits white space. Sunny awakens in the real world at the hospital. Everything seems to hit him all at once, and he simply and finally allows himself to cry for the first time in years. There's just one thing to do now. Sunny exits his room and heads towards Basil's, where all of his friends are. He slowly enters, faces all of his friends, and says, Sunny has always been a quiet but trustworthy boy. He'd always make time to listen to his friends' problems when no one else would. He's a very creative person, as we've seen throughout the entire game, being able to make worlds and adventures in his head to dream about, which most likely he could apply in real life and make something amazing out of it. As much as he doesn't believe it, he can be very talented at things, as we saw with the violin. But most important of all, the one thing he truly cares deeply for and could never replace are his friends and his dear older sister, Marie. His happiest memories come from spending time with them, and even after not seeing them for years, they're the one thing in Headspace that remains the same. He could never forget them because he truly cared about them. As we all know though, unfortunately his life took a turn for the worse on the day of his and Marie's recital, where he accidentally ended up taking his own sister's life. His life became overrun with escapism, trauma, and so many other things we could list out here. But at the end of it all, he finally found the strength and courage to overcome it with the help of his friends and the spirit of his beloved sister. We can never truly know how his friends reacted to the truth, but I think the most important part is the fact that he was able to overcome it and can now move on with his life. It was a very rough journey, but even through it all, he was still able to shine just like he had before. The sun may have shined brighter when she was here, but he can still be pretty sunny on his own.